Hi there. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the legal process that I'm undergoing. It's a legal process for compensation for criminal injury. And it all arises as a result of historic abuse as a child between the ages of 8 and 14 roughly. Different locations, same person, pretty much. Non-consensual, and it's really affected me over my life. It wasn't until the last couple of years ago that I began to see the sense of going back into therapy and group work for this, and I became involved in an organisation called SAMSON, Survivors and Mates Support Network, and they're amazing. But it's really through SAMSON that I've been able to go through this legal process, and it's completely pro bono, it's completely free. I have a legal team representing me, and I've gone through my second legal consult. Some of it's gotten very detailed, and it's a lot to talk about. I won't talk about it here, but normally I have to spend the weekend because I have my consults on Friday, sort of in recovery mode, because a lot of memories come up, and some of that's bodily. If you know something about trauma, you'll know what I mean. Anyway, it has affected me over my life in many, many ways, and even though I've managed to piece together an existence, it's affected my mental health. It caused initially PTSD and subsequently complex PTSD. It's been a challenge for me to be able to disentangle elements of what happened to me from questions of sexuality and identity, but I'm largely there. But it's not without having done decades and decades of therapy, even as a young person. So I first disclosed pretty much when I was 19, and then as a consequence of not really having the right setting, I left the town I grew up in and couldn't count on real support, I suppose. I got some understanding from family members, but they just didn't give anything beyond moral support. And I don't think they really understood. This is not a blame game, by the way. It's just that in society itself, very few people were informed, and services weren't set up for people like me. When I ended up in Melbourne, which is where I moved in an attempt to get away from the ramifications of that abuse and having disclosed, because it kind of put me in peril with the abuser, I approached CSA House, and that's a Centre for Sexual Assault, and naturally their analysis was that violence happens against women and girls. And, you know, I am in that category of woman, but back then it was difficult for them to be able to work out why someone assigned male at birth would be approaching them, and what would be the most appropriate resources. So a checkered history, I had to do therapy on my own bat, and I had a very sympathetic lesbian feminist, radical feminist therapist who guided me through inner child work when I was in my early 20s. But none of this really goes away. And when it comes to acknowledgement and justice, in the sense that there could be a legal response, I never knew that, and no one ever told me, not in social services, as I said, at CSA House, nor when I was in housing crisis and had to seek out the help of a welfare organisation, and was assigned a housing officer and social worker, and met with the social worker every week or so. This topic is something they wouldn't go into. The emphasis was on moving on. They just didn't have the mental framework. They didn't talk about trauma back in the 90s. But yeah, I mean, I survived as best I could, but I had housing crisis. I was also involved in sex work, and this is not a note of condemnation of sex work. There were good reasons why I did it, but there are a lot of things I hadn't sorted out for myself, yeah, including financially. And so yeah, my life was devastated by the ongoing shell shock of surviving both CSA and coming from a context of family violence as well. Thanks for listening. I'll update when I can.